morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, Minneapolis, as I speak to you right now, is on the brink. The country now is watching, and this could be the George Floyd riots all over again, and God forbid, maybe even worse. So, here is now exactly what is taking place. Yesterday in the morning, at about 10:45, a group of agitators, anti-ICE activists and rioters, and this is a very key point that must be stressed, urged and encouraged by that crazy mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, and Governor Tampon Tim Walz, told these anti-ICE activists, ICE is surging about 2,000 officials into the area for these targeted immigration crackdown operations, especially against the Somali fraudsters. So this was a big ICE raid that was being conducted across Minneapolis, and it was tied directly to the massive fraud involving the Somali community and the Democratic Party. And so what Walz and Frey did was they literally poured gasoline on the fire and told everyone, ICE is coming, they're surging, this is going to be massive operations. Show them you will resist. Show them you are protesting. Show them we don't want you in Minneapolis. Now, I've been saying this for months. I said this continued harassment and impeding and obstruction of ICE, this continued demonization of ICE, and Tim Walz and Jacob Frey in particular, calling them Nazis over and over again, Gestapo over and over again, Hitler over and over again. I said someone is going to get killed. Someone is going to get shot. Someone is going to get killed. It is not a question of if, it's a question of when. Well, yesterday was the when. Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old woman, previously divorced, had a child with her husband, now apparently remarried to her lesbian partner, who, by the way, had just come to Minneapolis from out of state. Her lesbian partner is an anti-ICE activist. She asked Renee Nicole Good to join her and her fellow agitators to stalk and harass ICE. They were stalking ICE in southern Minneapolis in a neighborhood where ICE was trying to conduct operations. They then deliberately, as they stalked them and harassed them, Renee Nicole Good then blocked ICE trucks and vehicles from being able to conduct their operation. 2 officers got out of the ICE vehicle. They approached Renee Nicole Good in her SUV in her Honda Pilot. One officer, you can clearly hear it. You can clearly hear it. Tells her, you're under arrest. Get out of the car. He then tries to open the front door. Her window is down. She then makes the tragic mistake. She puts her car in reverse. You can see the car go back several feet. She then puts it in drive. At this moment, there is a second ICE agent that is now walking up right in front of the vehicle. Right in front. And she guns it. She guns the engine. The vehicle then goes shooting straight towards that second ICE agent. It hits the ICE agent. The ICE agent, if you look at it in slow motion, it happens in a split second. But if you look at it as I have 100 times, in slow motion, rams and hits the ICE agent. As the ICE agent is now being hit, he pushes himself off of the vehicle to the right, or else he would have been completely run over. And as he pushes himself off, boom, 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 he fires 3 shots. One of the shots, you can see clearly, is in the front windshield. It penetrates the front windshield. So it means clearly he was in the line or the path of the vehicle as the vehicle accelerated towards him. One of the bullets at least hit Renee Nicole Good in the face or in the head. The car then continues to speed. She apparently has been shot in the head, and it crashes into another parked car about maybe, 30, 40, 50 feet down the road. Immediately, her lesbian partner is wailing, yelling, screaming, shouting, "What have you done? What have you done? What have you done?" The agitators are yelling and screaming, "What have you done? What have you done?" Now, there is to me no question in my mind, no question, that this was a legitimate act of self-defense. I know there's going to be an investigation. They're going to look at all the evidence. They're going to look at the videos. They're going to look at eyewitness testimony. This is going to be combed over, believe me. To me, it is very clear. This was legitimate self-defense on the part of the ICE agent. And moreover, and I have to say this, why the hell was this woman, 37 years of age, with apparently a 6-year-old son in school? You're a parent. You're a mother. You're a wife to your lesbian partner. What the hell are you doing obstructing and impeding a law enforcement operation? And not only were you impeding and obstructing a law enforcement operation, preventing ICE from being able to enforce the law and carry out their operations and the arrests of illegal aliens who have committed serious, heinous crimes. But when a police officer then, as you block them, comes up to you and gives you specific commands to stop your car, to get out of the car, you decide to try to ram the agents? You try to run over the agents? There's an expression. You F around, you find out. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. In other words, if you're going to play around and be reckless, and she was unbelievably reckless, and if you're going to be unbelievably stupid, well, you know what? I'm sorry. This is what happens. She has no one to blame but herself. And her lesbian lover, who apparently was crying, or partner, who was crying, shrieking, and it's caught on camera, saying, "It's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault." She was laying on the ground, just sobbing violently, saying she didn't want to be here. I talked her into it. I told her to come. The governor has blood on his hands. That crazy mayor has blood on his hands. They have been calling for these agitators and these domestic terrorists, and that's what they are. They are domestic terrorists who are doing everything in their power, like yesterday, to assault ICE, to impede ICE, to threaten ICE, to target ICE, to obstruct ICE. You urge people to take to the streets, and that's what they did. And you urge them to thwart ICE in the process of executing warrants and from going after criminal, violent, illegal aliens. You have no business doing so, but you're going to get people killed. This was inevitable. And I'm telling you, my friends, it was done on purpose. They wanted a martyr. The left, the anti-ICE crowd, the open borders, the sanctuary city mayors, the sanctuary city governors, they have been looking for a martyr. They wanted a martyr. They wanted a shooting. And by God, now they got their shooting. In the wake of what happened, the mayor of Minneapolis then held a deranged press conference. There's no other word. He was unhinged. He was deranged. He was unprofessional. He frankly sounded insane, in which he told ICE to get the F out of Minneapolis.
Agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem yesterday at a press conference addressing reporters about what happened in Minneapolis yesterday, a tragic, really senseless death of a 37-year-old woman, a mother, a wife. She was remarried to her lesbian partner after having a child with her first husband, who apparently also died almost at the same age as her, almost 37 years old. A couple of years ago. Both of them were from out of state. In fact, the car that she was driving had a Missouri license plate, an out-of-state license plate. So these are people that were very new to Minneapolis, who were activists, and especially the lesbian partner. And under urging from Jacob Frey, that crazy mayor, and Tampon Tim Walz, because it's clear they're up to their eyeballs in the Somali fraud scandal. And so with DHS surging thousands and thousands of officers as they were now going into Minneapolis, arresting many of these criminal, illegal alien Somalians, they were trying to urge as much resistance and harassment and obstruction of ICE as possible. And so these idiots went where they shouldn't have gone. And they found ICE in a residential neighborhood, ironically about a mile away from where George Floyd was killed. And then they began to stalk him. They began to harass him. Then Renee Nicole Good, the woman that eventually was shot, literally took her SUV and cut off ICE and their vehicles. And you can see it on the video. Two ICE agents get out. They're very angry. I don't blame them. She's literally impeding their raid. They're in the process of trying to conduct a raid, and she's impeding them. And so they get out and they say, "Get out of the car. We're commanding you. We're ordering you. Get out of the car. You're under arrest." And one of the ICE agents tries to grab her door to open it. Her window is wide open. She then backs up her vehicle, disobeys the command, and then hits the gas pedal and guns it. There was another agent who had walked right in front of the vehicle, telling her with his hand up, like, stop, you're under arrest. Well, she didn't want to be under arrest. And so the vehicle was going to, actually had hit the second ICE agent on the side. It clipped him, but she would have ran him over had he not pulled out his gun and shot. In fact, shot 3 times. And now Renee Nicole Good is dead. And what Jacob Frey is trying to do, what Tim Walz is trying to do, what the Democrats and the entire corrupt media are trying to do, is they're now trying to turn this into the summer of love, in this case, the winter of love, 2026, they want to turn this into Black Lives Matter and all the rioting and George Floyd all over again. Renee Nicole Good, they want to turn her into the new George Floyd. And so within an hour, hundreds and hundreds of anti-ICE left-wing agitators and protesters descended upon that neighborhood and the site of the shooting. They began to attack ICE agents. They began to pelt them with all kinds of objects. ICE agents were punched, were kicked, were stomped. They had to use pepper balls, pepper spray, non-lethal munitions to try to disperse the crowd. And then Frey and Waltz really got into it. Listen now to Jacob Frey inciting a riot. There's just no other way to put it. This is a full-blown insurrection right now. As I speak to you right now, Minneapolis and Minnesota is engaged in a full-blown insurrection. Instead of condemning these left-wing domestic terrorists for attacking ICE, for trying to run over and kill 2 ICE agents, instead of saying, you don't do that, you don't threaten ICE, you don't run them over, you don't try to mow them down, you don't obstruct and impede them in the process of them enforcing the law. They literally sided with the domestic terrorists. Here's Jacob Frey, roll cut 15, Mike.
I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you.
You get the F out of Minneapolis. You're the one that's creating the problem, not ICE. Notice what he's saying is that we are not going to allow you to deport all of these illegal aliens. That ICE now is not allowed to be in Minneapolis. That they stand with the illegals against ICE. Okay, so let me just very quickly set the table, and then I want to go to the calls, obviously. 617-266-6868. I want to play the clip of the shooting. Now, there's just a couple of things I want to stress. Number one, that ICE was being stalked by this woman, Renee Nicole Good, her lesbian wife, lover, whatever, and a group of about 100 to 150 activists and agitators who were called to the streets by the mayor, Jacob Frey, and by Governor Tim Walz. Okay, so this is very important. They were urged to be there at the behest of the mayor and the governor. Okay, not just at that street, everywhere, because the operation was taking place all over Minneapolis. So they're there, and they've been there for hours. Then Renee Nicole Good drives her Honda Pilot, her SUV, and there's no question, blocking the road. So now, and ICE is trying to enforce the law. They're about to conduct a raid, an operation. Now they can't go. They're blocked. So they're angry because now you're obstructing and impeding law enforcement as they're trying to make arrests, which, by the way, is a crime. It's illegal. One of the agents, you could see, gets out of the car, angry. There's a few F-bombs. And he says, get the F out of the car. You're under arrest. Get the F out of the car. Now, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, this thing is over. This thing is over. When a police officer, in the midst of a law enforcement operation, in the midst of them making arrests or trying to make arrests, and you are impeding and obstructing them, then tells you, get out of your vehicle, you get out of the vehicle. Case closed. There's nothing to discuss. But she doesn't obey their commands. Now, she then backs up her car. Now, and then she puts it in drive. And the point I want to stress is, you can see it on the video. It's undeniable. There is ice everywhere on the ground. You can tell the officers are slipping. They're sliding a little bit with their feet. It's a side street, a residential neighborhood. Frankly, I don't know about if the snow plowing is very good over there, but you can see snow, you can see ice. In other words, so the roads, there's black ice, so the roads are slippery, which makes it even more dangerous for the officers when you're confronting a vehicle, which is a deadly weapon. Then Renee Nicole Good guns the vehicle. Okay, she hits the gas pedal, she guns the engine. It then goes directly against the second ICE officer who's got his hand out saying, stop, stop. Now, the vehicle then clips, you can clearly see it, hits the officer before any shots are fired. The officer is hit. The officer then pushes off the front end of the vehicle, or else he would have been completely run over and probably killed. And that's when he goes boom, 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 and fires 3 shots. Now, if this is not a justified self-defense shooting, then honest to God, nothing is. Honest to God, nothing is. Now, I want you to listen to it and think of people everywhere, agitators everywhere, blocking the street, blocking ICE, swearing at ICE, yelling at ICE, harassing ICE. This is the circumstance and the context. And the question that I'm asking, which is to me the biggest question that for some reason the media refuses to ask, what business did Renee Nicole Good have being there? She had no business. Hey, if the police are in the process of arresting somebody in my neighborhood, what business do I have driving my car and obstructing them in the midst of making an arrest? What business do I have impeding them as they're trying to do their job and enforce the law and conduct an operation? I don't have any business being there. I don't have any business obstructing them. And if I'm going to obstruct them, and then they tell me to get out of the car, and instead I back up and then gun the engine and try to run them over, yeah, I'm going to get shot. You're going to get shot. Duh, it's common sense. Again, F around, you find out. I mean, I'm sorry. You learned this in kindergarten. It's disturbing video. I want to warn everybody in case you have kids, they may not want to hear it. Roll cut 13, Mike.
What the dude? What the
dude? What are you doing there? Like that's it. Like, dude, what are you guys doing there? That's the point. Now you keep doing this, and you keep doing this. You keep harassing. You keep obstructing. You keep persecuting. You keep assaulting. Then this is what's going to happen. Eventually, somebody was going to get shot and killed. Now, look, the lines are full, and I want to go to the phone lines, but I have to mention this, okay? As disgusting and inflammatory and I believe criminal Jacob Frey's behavior, the mayor, the crazy mayor of Minneapolis was, what he did before urging people to go to the streets and block ICE, but then afterwards telling ICE to get out of the city. And by the way, he has now, please listen to this, because Minneapolis is on the brink. This city is going to blow. And this could take other cities with them. Jacob Frey has now pulled out all of the police from Minneapolis. That's what he's now done. He has pulled the cops out. And he is telling protesters, quote unquote, take it to the streets. Take it to the streets. And so yesterday, thousands of them began to descend upon a federal building, a la Black Lives Matter. And they started to smash windows. And they started to throw objects. And they wanted to get after federal officials who were apparently inside that building. At the scene of the shooting, about an hour later, Sandy says she's got more video. She's going to send it over. You can clearly see the video where you've got now hundreds and hundreds of these anti-ICE leftist, really, they're terrorists, these professional agitators, rioters, who started to pelt ICE agents on the scene with rocks, with bricks, punching them, kicking them, throwing objects at them, bumping up their bodies against their cars so the cars couldn't go anywhere in order to either leave or to conduct an operation. It is now chaos and anarchy in Minneapolis. But the worst is Tim Walz. Now, according to many journalists there who are covering him, they're saying he's on the verge of a nervous breakdown, that something has snapped inside Tim Walz. Yesterday, he came out, and instead of calming the waters, he was pouring gasoline on the fire to an extent that we have not seen since 1859, 1860 in this country. Listen now to Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, saying that Minnesota is now at war with the federal government. Roll cut 21, Mike.
Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission.
Now, that means he's calling up the National Guard. He said now he's about to call up he's calling it the Minnesota Guard. And he's telling them that he wants them to go to the streets, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, to protect the illegal aliens, to protect the Somali community, to prevent ICE, to block and thwart ICE from conducting any more operations. And he also says that he wants everyone to take it to the streets, not just in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in New York, as he put it, take it to the streets, stand with us. In other words, they want to repeat the BLM riots of 2020. And Minnesota is now ground zero in an open insurrection against ICE, against the federal government, and against Donald Trump. Okay, very quick. Listen now to Tampon Tim. This is after now the shooting of Renee Nicole Good, saying, if you're in Portland, if you're in Los Angeles, if you're in Chicago, take it to the streets. Stand with Minneapolis. Roll cut 20, Mike.
Donald Trump will make this about me. He will make this about politics. This is about public safety, and this is about normalcy. To Americans who are watching this, if you're in Portland or you're in LA or you're in Chicago or you're wherever they're coming next, stand with us. Stand with us against this. This was so preventable.
Yeah. If you guys hadn't told them to go to the streets, none of this would have happened. But notice now, you see, it's an open call for an insurrection I mean, I'm not the only one saying this. It's pretty obvious. No. Stop them in Chicago. Stop them in L.A. Stop them in Portland. Stop them in Boston. Stop them in New York. In other words, rise up. That's it. Take over the streets, take over our cities, and kick ICE out. Period. We're going to side with the illegals. It's an insurrection. Frankly, if you want to know the truth, it's treason. Now, he then says, get ready, because I'm going to call up the Minnesota Guard. Roll cut 17, Mike.
From here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community. They're business owners. They're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans.
Now, did you catch that? They're our National Guard. They're Minnesotans, i.e. not Americans. And he openly has now said, I am calling up the National Guard, or he's about to, and I will deploy thousands and thousands of them on the streets of Minneapolis, St. Paul, in order to thwart and block and kick out ICE. So what are you going to do? You're going to shoot at ICE agents? We're going to have what? We're going to have gunfights now on the streets of Minneapolis? We're going to have the federal government and the Minnesota National Guard literally slaughtering each other? Is this what you're asking for, you lunatic? It says everybody's throwing the F-bomb in Minnesota. You effing lunatic? That's what you're calling for? Now, remember this, okay? There's two things you have to keep remembering. Waltz is going down. He has been now clearly implicated in the massive multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal, primarily in the Somali community, that has now implicated him, that corrupt mayor of Minneapolis, Keith Ellison, the attorney general, the Democratic Party, all over Minnesota. He's on the verge of being forced to resign, and he could easily go to jail. He needs an incident. This is the incident. He needs something to distract from the massive fraud. And many of those agents that were being surged over the last couple of days were there to go after specifically these Somali fraudsters who are illegal aliens. And so that's why he was saying, block them, take it to the streets, obstruct them. And the second point, he's owned by China. He's honeymooned in China. He's gone to China over 30 times. He's openly praised communist China. They pay for his private flights. They pay speeches. They pay for his travel. They pay. In other words, he's an agent of the communist Chinese. It's so obvious. What would communist China love more than for a civil war to break out in the United States? They could take us over without firing a shot. And what he's really saying is, let this violence break out and this chaos in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and spread it. Spread it to Chicago. Spread it to New York. Spread it to L.A. Spread it to Boston. Spread it to Portland. Spread it. This is almost a repeat now of 1860, where the Democrats urged open rebellion and insurrection against the federal government because they don't want their illegals to be deported, period. Now, if President Trump's people are listening, and I know they are, Mr. President, you've got to do this, I mean yesterday. He's got to federalize the National Guard in Minnesota. You've got to cut him off at the pass. Federalize the National Guard. They don't answer to Tim Waltz, they answer to the president. And then you put the National Guard on the streets to clean out all of these protesters now. Have you seen the pictures? They're marching. They've taken over the streets of Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's no police. There's open anarchy. And I'm sorry, but Jacob Frey needs to be arrested. This guy is inciting riots. This guy is inciting open domestic terrorism. And he can drop the F-bomb. And by the way, he looks like a clown when he drops an F-bomb. You're a mayor and you talk like this? You loser, you? But what he's doing is he's inciting open violence and rebellion against ICE and against the federal government and federal officials. Somebody needs to teach this punk a lesson. Because I'm telling you, mark my words, if this thing is not nipped in the bud, and I mean now, this is going to be Black Lives Matter 2.0 all over again. Minneapolis will burn. Portland will burn. Chicago will burn. LA will burn. New York, they already had a massive protest in New York last night. They're just getting warmed up now with Mamdani. New York will burn. And yes, Boston will burn. This is not alarmism. This is not hysteria. This is not panic. They're organizing. They're mobilizing. My God, just look at social media. They've been itching to do this and to bring Trump's presidency down by spreading massive chaos and disorder on the streets. They needed a martyr. They needed a dead body. They got their martyr. They got their dead body. Mr. President, take action now before this thing completely spirals out of control. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Let me ask you 3 questions. Normally they say in talk radio you should only do 1 question at a time. Not with this audience, okay? Best in the business. You guys can handle multiple questions. Number 1, did you see the video? In your view, was this a legitimate shooting, a legitimate self-defense shooting? You know my position. I say yes, but I want to hear from you. Number 2, does Jacob Frey and Tim Waltz, do they bear at least partial responsibility for the death of Renee Nicole Good? Does Tampon Tim and crazy Jacob Frey, do they have blood on their hands? And number 3, do you fear that this thing can now potentially, God forbid, explode? Is Minneapolis now on the brink? 617-266-6868. Let's go to Mario in New Hampshire. Mario, you're going to kick us off. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Mario.
Welcome back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All the best to you and your family, Mario.
Yours as well. So, Jeff, I'm gonna summarize it all and try to answer all your questions. So, number 1, Jacob Frey and Tim Walz should be classified as domestic terrorists. They are breaking the law, federal law. The Homeland Security Act was formed or enacted in 2002. In 2003, ICE was formed. Let me educate your audience on the 5 different responsibilities of ICE. They are immigration enforcement, custom and trade enforcement, Homeland Security investigations, enforcement and removal operations, otherwise known as ERO, counterterrorism, and national security. These law enforcement officers are out doing their jobs, rightfully so, following United States federal law. If Tampon Tim and Jacob Frey are against what they're doing, They should do their jobs and contact their local congressmen and women and change the laws. They are breaking the law in plain sight. They should be in handcuffs and imprisoned, like you said, right away. Okay? That's number one. Number two, to answer your second question, as a former law enforcement officer myself and a victim of gun violence, I know a thing or two about shootings and guns in very dangerous situations that cops are put in every day. Based upon the videos that I have seen, and based upon my training and experience and expertise in guns, that shooting to me appears to be lawful. Okay? I made a post on social media yesterday, encouraging protesters not to get involved in law enforcement activities. Otherwise, FO, like you said earlier in your show. And I had people saying, why didn't the cops shoot the tires? Well, I got news for you folks. If we shoot tires, have you ever driven on a flat tire before, Jeff?
I have. Yeah,
it's forward. Yeah, a vehicle can still propel forward or backward. And plus, we're not trained to shoot at tires. Okay, there's someone in that vehicle who has the foot on the accelerator, who's in control of that vehicle. We are trained to shoot the threat. So the threat is not necessarily the car, it's just the means. The threat is the person in control of that vehicle. So that's who you have to remove, is that threat. So unfortunately, this young lady, and I feel bad that she's no longer with us, but like you said earlier, why the hell was she there? Okay? It was her poor decisions to go to an area where she had no reason being there, and she put herself in that predicament by making poor decisions. And I'm sorry to say that we live in a culture today where we have a lot of entitled brats who think they can do whatever the hell they want without any repercussions. That's the culture that we live in society today. It's not just in Minnesota. It's everywhere in the U.S., unfortunately. I see it every day in social media, and I'm sure all your listeners do as well. It's got to stop. It has to stop. Nothing good is going to come out of this when you interfere with police matters.
Mario, as a former decorated law enforcement officer and as someone who was badly shot in the line of duty, I want to ask you this, and this is the argument. CNN is going crazy, MS Now, all of them. They're Democrats. They're losing their minds. They're clearly trying to foment riots. It's obvious. Okay, it's obvious. Their argument is, well, just let her go. In other words, okay, you told her to get out of the car. She was obstructing the operation. You told her to get out of the car. You told her she was under arrest. She refused to comply. Now she guns the car. She's gunning the engine. Just let her go. Jump out of the way. If she hits you, we'll take you to the hospital. But that there was no reason to shoot. Let her go. And if you have to get her, you can get her afterwards. What say you?
Well, if you watch that video really closely and you know what you're looking for, and there is a video, I'll share it with you afterwards. There's a video where she turns her wheels, and the wheels are pointed directly towards that federal agent.
That's right.
And she propels her vehicle forward towards him. That's an act of, I'm going to run you over. That's how we think. We have guns on our hips for a reason. Okay, we're not in the business of letting people go. If you make an act, okay, that's going to potentially take the life of a law enforcement officer, you're going to get shot, plain and simple. We don't bend the rules for people just to, we're not in the business of having feelings. We don't get paid to have feelings. We're paid to do a job, and that is enforce the law. If you don't like it, tough. Stay home. Don't go out and cause problems or be part of a problem. Stay home, and you'll have your life. Sorry, but not sorry. That's just the way it is. And you're right. On my last point is Tim Walz and Jacob Frey, what they're doing is they're fomenting an insurrection. It's just to buy them time because they know they're in deep water with this Somali fraud. Okay? They've gotten caught 6 ways to Sunday. They're going to jail eventually. Mark my words. They will go to jail. They better go to jail.
Mario, as always, thank you so much for your service And thank you for that call. You hit the nail right on the head. 617-266-6868 is the number. If you look at the video, just look at the wheels. They're aimed directly at that second police officer. She was going to run him over. She was going to run him over. So I'm sorry. You are obstructing police. You're disobeying direct commands. You're resisting arrest. Then you take your car, you weaponize your car, and then you try to ram and run over not one but two ICE agents. And you're shocked that she gets shot? Like, on what planet is this not a justified shooting? On what planet is this not justified self-defense? To me, I can't read the evidence any other way. And for the left to claim anything different, they should be ashamed of themselves. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. John in Colorado. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy New Year to you and yours.
Happy New Year. All the best to you and your family, John.
Love your show. I moved from the Boston area to Larkspur, Colorado a couple years ago. Still try to catch you regularly. Sometimes it's a bit hard to get up at 4 a.m. to get your opening, but really love your show. So this Minneapolis thing, I think, the Renee Nicole Good death looked a bit of a tragedy to me. I watched the video online a few times. I do think there's a little bit of a gray area there, but as Mario pointed out, she put herself in that position, and so it just seems like a big tragedy to me. But one of the things that really incensed me more than that was watching I watched more video of the protesters, the terrorist protesters, getting right up in the face of ICE. I don't know, yelling, probably spitting, just right up close, inches away, and dozens of them, my blood started to boil. And then I'm listening to the news conference by the mayor, the stupid mayor and the stupid governor, and they were driving me crazy. And I thought, what can be done here? And you touched on this a few minutes ago with saying Trump should immediately federalize the National Guard, and I agree with that. And I want to throw an idea on the table. Do you remember in the Iraq War, I don't remember exactly when, but maybe a year or two in, things were going a little bit dicey, and then the Bush administration came up with this idea of the surge.
Yes.
You recall the surge? I think the federal government, Trump, and the ICE and the federal government should surge Minneapolis, like with overwhelming force, and just bring so many people in that, they just like what happened there, and turn the tables. What do you think of that?
Oh, I so agree with you. And by the way, many, many, many residents in Minnesota, and especially in Minneapolis, St. Paul, are begging President Trump to do exactly what you're just suggesting right now, John. They're saying, listen, 2,000 is not enough. You need 10, 15, 20,000. Because what Frey has done, he's pulled out the police. And by the way, just as a side thing, that police chief, Brian O'Hara, I want him. Him I want. Because he's complicit with that crazy mayor. And you got a police force now that's actively trying to undermine ICE and federal immigration officials. And so they're doing whatever Frey tells them to do. And so they're just abandoning the streets. They're just pulling out, and they're basically telling the activists, it's the Black Lives Matter people, they're just recycling them. So they're telling all of these left-wing domestic terrorists, Minneapolis is yours. Take it. They're begging for a massive riot. They're begging. So people are scared. There's crime. There's anarchy. There's chaos. They're attacking federal buildings. They're attacking ICE agents now with impunity. What they want to do is they want to make it impossible for ICE to conduct any of their raids, and then essentially drive ICE out of Minneapolis. And if they can drive him out of Minneapolis, then you drive him out of everywhere. You drive him out of Boston, out of Portland, out of L.A., out of Chicago, hell, out of Denver in your neck of the woods, or out of New York. That's their plan. And so I'm with you. Trump's got to go big and he's got to go heavy. So this can't be a couple thousand. You've got to pour in now federal resources, federal assets, and send in the troops. But Waltz and Frey have to realize that they're going to pay now a steep price for what they've done. And I'm telling you, Frey should be arrested. He practically caused that murder. Okay, that killing. He practically caused it. So, and then after his a press conference afterwards, he's all but calling for rioting. ICE to get out of the city and start rioting. Riot until you chase ICE out. It's an insurrection. It's the very definition of an insurrection. Anyway, John, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, did you see the video?
I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you.
No, that's on you. 720 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. That, of course, was the crazy mayor of. He may even be crazier than Mamdani. I'm not kidding. That's Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis. Okay, let me ask all of you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Are elected officials, say like Tampon Tim Waltz or Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, who promoted resistance to federal law enforcement, are they responsible for the deadly ICE shooting that took place in Minneapolis yesterday? So, are elected officials like Tim Waltz or Jacob Frey, who promoted resistance to federal immigration law enforcement, are they responsible for the deadly ICE shooting yesterday in Minneapolis? A, yes. B, no. I want to hear from you. I am a yes all the way on this one. But that's me. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. You can also vote via X. And yep, I was active on X yesterday. My handle, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN as in National ER. Lou in Rhode Island. Thanks for holding, Lou, and welcome.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, Jeff. I want to answer your question. As you would say, not just 100% yes, 1,000% yes. Totally responsible for this. And I have a question for you at the end when I get to the end. But I want let's put this in a nutshell. All of this stuff, what they're doing, especially trying to make this poor woman as good into the new George Floyd, is basically the bottom line is this is all a cover-up for their own criminality and the criminality of the Somalis in Minneapolis. And I even looked I was looking on X today. It's the criminality in Somalia to begin with. Other world organizations who have tried to come in there to give aid, the aid is all taken by what was Al-Shabaab and these gangs down there. It's all taken. the World Food Program. It gets taken from them. This is a huge, huge scandal. It implicates both Walls and Frey. He's the guy who was at the Leering Center, who was trying to push people away from there and lie to reporters. They saw him dancing at Frey's inaugural. Yes, these are criminals. They're trying to divert attention away from their criminality and all that's been going on there. I even noticed that the new dingbat or moonbat mayor of Seattle, Washington, they asked her if she's going to look into the Somali fraud. She said one word answer, no. And now I see Senator Markey sticking his foot in this thing too. Yes, it's a cover-up for the Dems' criminality. They're covering up for criminality, covering up for Maduro's criminality, and these people's and this criminality as well. Two reasons. One reason is I think a lot of it goes into their campaign funds and keeps them getting elected. Number two is the votes. They need the illegal votes. Minnesota is a no voter ID state, and so the illegals can go vote, and they get 80,000 votes in this community, and that keeps the Democrats afloat. So I think and then the worst thing is that you look at what the fraud is all about. The fraud is all about money for health care, food, and child care. The three things that Democrats compassion. They should be so concerned that it's misdirected into this kind of crap and into this kind of fraud. They should be rebelling against the Democrats and those involved in the fraud itself. And another thing that bothers me is I felt this morning, and I think it's bothered a lot of people for a long time. The murder of Melissa Hortman. There's something about it that I think there was a big cover up there, and there's something that they were involved. That this is all part of the whole thing too. But I can't put my finger on it.
Well, she was the only Democrat state rep who voted in Minnesota in the state legislature against giving illegal aliens health care benefits. And she was one of the few that was blowing the whistle on the fraud in the Democratic Party. And then conveniently, she ends up being shot dead. So I'm not saying there's a connection, but it's suspicious. No, look, to be honest, one of the things I was going to talk about before this happened was the unbelievable congressional testimony yesterday about not just the massive fraud in the Somali community in Minnesota, but how much Tim Walz was involved, how much he knew, how he was told about it over and over and over. And by the way, the mayor, Jacob Frey, they were warned, they were told, and not only did they do nothing, the whistleblowers were harassed, they were demoted, they were threatened.
What the dude? What the
That, of course, was yesterday in a suburb of Minneapolis in which Renee Nicole Good was shot fatally after she tried to ram and run over not one but two ICE agents. 7:33 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Minneapolis now is on edge. Thousands, and I mean thousands, took to the streets after the shooting, urged on by Jacob Frey, the crazy mayor, tampon Tim Walz. Frey, in fact, has pulled out all of the police from Minneapolis. They have taken over these anti-ICE activists. They've taken over every major road, every major artery. They are basically shutting the city down, but that's just the beginning. They are now vowing days of rage. And now the question is, will they burn Minneapolis as they did in 2020? Tim Walz now says he may deploy the National Guard to be used against ICE. Are we now drifting towards a potential civil war? 266-6868 is the number. Let me just say this very quickly. Already now, the media, this is CNN, MS Now, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they're going on, the Minnesota Star Tribune, they're all going on about how Renee Nicole Good was, quote unquote, murdered by ICE. So they're denying the proof of the videos. There are different videos from different angles. A lot of it now, if you look at it, especially in slow motion, because it happens within a second. It's so fast. But if you look at it in slow motion, it is very obvious that Renee Nicole Good, disobeyed a direct command to get out of the car. They were going to arrest her for obstructing the ICE operation. She was blocking them as they were trying to leave the street. And then she put her car in reverse, and then she hit the gas pedal, and her wheels were aimed directly at a second ICE agent. Had he not utilized his firearm, he would most likely either be in very critical condition or dead. And yet it doesn't matter. Already, the media, like George Floyd, is crafting a narrative. ICE is evil. ICE is Hitler. ICE are Nazis. And they are now killing and massacring American citizens on the streets. And they're doing this to foment violence, to foment rioting, to foment opposition to ICE, and to now turn blue cities into anarchy and zones of chaos. Listen now to Chuck U. Schumer. It's one after another. Here's Chuck U. Schumer saying ICE has blood on its hands and needs to now get out of every sanctuary city. Roll cut 24. Mike.
I just want to start by getting your reaction to what you were thinking about when you watched that video.
It's horrific. And when you hear the lady screaming, saying, "What the F are you doing?" and you see what happened, you feel like a punch in the stomach. What the hell is going on here? And the bottom line is very simple, Jen. We should not have ICE agents patrolling our streets. They're not needed. They create chaos, and they even create deaths. The mayor of Minneapolis didn't want them. So many other cities didn't. This is sort of Trump strutting around. But they don't belong in our cities, plain and simple. We need a full investigation here as to what happened.
Okay, just so that everybody knows, in the midst of this massive raid, this operation over the last couple of days, and continuing for the next couple of days, they arrested hundreds, ICE arrested hundreds of convicted murderers, illegal aliens, convicted murderers, child rapists, sexual predators, drug traffickers, gangbangers. It wasn't just Somali fraudsters, bad as they are. We're talking the worst, most vile criminals that Joe Biden let in. And so what Chuck Schumer is saying, let's be clear, and what Jacob Frey is saying, and what Tim Walz is saying, and what the Democrats and the media are saying, is that we don't have a right to arrest them? We don't have a right to go in there and get them, and detain them, and then deport them? So you mean to tell me that you're now openly siding with murderers and child rapists and drug traffickers and gangbangers? That you're going to side with them over American citizens, over the law, over law enforcement? So if ICE has no business being in those cities, you're saying we have no right to go after them. They're going to turn this country into a third world hellhole. So how many more Joycelyn Nungares have to be slaughtered? How many more innocent Americans have to be killed? How many? Until we can finally have ICE do their job. This is treason. This is an abdication of their responsibilities and their duties. This is a war on law enforcement. This is a war on America. And let me tell you what I think ultimately caused this. And you tell me if you agree or disagree. How come ICE has been allowed to be constantly harassed, constantly attacked, constantly assaulted in city after city after city, month after month after month? That's what's emboldened these domestic terrorists, these agitators, these rioters. There's no consequences to them obstructing and impeding and attacking ICE. So they keep doing it, and they get more reckless, to the point that they got so reckless yesterday, it ended up costing a woman her life. I don't know about you, but I can't. If the police are in the midst of enforcing the law and conducting a raid, I don't have the right to just drive my SUV, and I have an SUV, the right to take my SUV and just what? Block them, stalk them, harass them, impede them. They're trying to make an arrest and I block their vehicle. And then they tell me to get out of the car. I'm under arrest. And then what? I have the right to then back up my car and then hit the gas pedal and gun the engine and try to ram them or run them over? What do you think is going to happen to me? What do you think would happen to you? What would happen to any of us? So what is it now? Open season on law enforcement? No. I don't like you in my neighborhood. No, I don't think you should be making an arrest. I have a right to run you over. This is what the Democrats are now defending. This is what the media is now defending. And by the way, crime in Minneapolis is out of freaking control. Murder, way up. Homicides, way up. Burglaries, way up. Carjackings, way up. Well, it's no wonder with these idiots running that city. And now he's pulled out the police? How the hell does the mayor pull the police out of an entire city and get away with it? How is this legal? And with the full backing of the Moonbat City Council. Ay. No. They're lighting the match. They have set the powder. They want massive rioting. They want an explosion like what we saw after the death of George Floyd. Now they want to make it 2.0 with Renee Nicole Good. And they want to spread it to city after city. You want to talk about January 6th? This is the ultimate January 6th. It's an open, naked insurrection. President Trump, it's time to take the gloves off. Federalize the National Guard. Send in 10, 15, 20,000 troops. You restore order to Minneapolis. And it's time to make an example of these crazy, out of control, rogue mayors and governors. Put Jacob Frey in handcuffs. And then let's see if he's going to continue to do his tough guy act. Let's see how tough he is after you slap on the handcuffs. Agree? Disagree? Okay, let me ask you. Was the shooting of Renee Nicole Good justified self-defense? Did you see the video? What's your take? And Jacob Frey, the crazy, the Moonbat mayor of Minneapolis, and Tampon Tim Walz, are they now deliberately fomenting violence and an insurrection? And what should President Trump do? Eddie in Maine. Thanks for holding, Eddie, and welcome.
Glad to hear you again.
Eddie, go ahead, my friend. You're on the air.
Eddie Sebago Lake, Maine. One thing I'd like to know is, why aren't all these protesters being investigated? I guarantee you 100% of them are on some kind of public assistance. Can't they freeze that while they're being investigated? Same thing with the mayor and the governor. They're both being investigated for being part of the fraud there. Freeze their assets. You got to hit them where it hurts. And why isn't George Soros? Forgive me, I speak too fast. Why isn't he being helicopter swooping on his complex and he's being dragged out, him and his son. And I say, freeze all their assets. You got to hit him when he's hurt. Because all I know is my wife and I are both in our early 70s, and we have to work part-time to put hamburger on our table. And all these protesters, we're paying for it with our friggin' tax money. Come on, something's got to be done, Kuhner man.
No, Eddie, you're completely right. And just to piggyback off of what you're saying, take Minneapolis right now. I mean, there are thousands and thousands on the streets everywhere. It's the same crowd. They keep recycling. It's the same. Many of them are waving Palestinian flags, the communist hammer and sickle. You've got people now waving the Mexican flag. What the hell the Mexican flag has to do with this? The Somali flag, that flag is now flying. But these are the same people that protested Trump with the nighttime raid with Maduro. It's the same people that were protesting against Israel during the war in Gaza. It's the same people that were out on the streets during the Black Lives Matter riots. So it's a constant group of professional protesters, professional rioters, professional left-wing activists, and they're paid to riot. That's what they do. They're paid. And the other thing is, and this is where it's so dangerous, Eddie, they are now being paid to monitor ICE. What Jacob Frey and Tim Walz did, listen to this, is that they contacted these left-wing groups, organized groups, paid by Soros, and they let them know when ICE is coming into certain neighborhoods. And then these people go out and they track the ICE vehicles. And then when ICE begins to make a move, to make an arrest or to conduct a raid or whatever, they then tip off the illegals. Literally, either by calling them, texting them. They're even bringing out whistles, and they just start blowing the whistles. Like, in other words, you're blowing the whistle and like, hey, ICE is here, get out, run, make a run for it. So it's not just that they're making life difficult for ICE and they're not cooperating. They're actively impeding, obstructing, harassing ICE, and they're trying to help the illegals escape. And look, here, Eddie, just hang on because I want to get your reaction to this. This was Kristi Noem yesterday, and she's at wit's end. She's at wit's end. She's like, I want you to know the kind of scumbags, the kind of vile, evil criminals, illegal aliens, criminals, that Tim Walz and Jacob Frey, just to give an example, in Minneapolis are protecting. Listen now to Kristi Noem. This was her on Fox yesterday. Roll cut 1B. Mike.
Surged the last 48 hours. We've arrested hundreds and hundreds of dangerous criminals off the streets in Minnesota and people that are a part of this fraud scheme. So this morning, I left D.C. at like 2 a.m., got to Minnesota in time. We arrested a murderer, someone who was extorting money in other countries, and also sexual assault perpetuators, individuals who were attacking children. So we've gotten them off of the streets, and we did it with no help from Governor Walz, no help from the Democrats, those who are trying to cover it up. We've ignored them and done the work that President Trump has given us to do. And thank God we have a president that wants to make America safe again for every single citizen, regardless of where they live.
Not even no help from in other words, he doesn't care. Walz is saying, I don't give a damn. So flood my community or flood my state with murderers, flood them with sex predators, flood them with child rapists, flood them with Trender Aragua and MS-13 and gangbangers. I don't care. As long as you vote Democrat, I don't care. As long as you keep the massive Somali fraud going, I don't care. But it's even worse than that. Because now he's telling agitators and activists, go and block ICE. No. Prevent them from being able to nab these murderers and sex predators and drug traffickers. Follow them, track them in live time. Let people know where they are. Tip off illegals so they can escape. He's aiding and abetting criminals. He's openly obstructing justice. How the hell is Jacob Frey and Tim Walz, how are they not in handcuffs? Like, I'm looking around me like, am I crazy? Like, how can a governor and a mayor get away with this? And by the way, both of them up to their eyeballs in Somali fraud and corruption. I want to know how much Jacob Frey, how much he's lined his pockets. I want to know how freaking rich, stinking rich Tim Walz has become by taking money from these Somali fraudsters. Okay? So they're stealing our taxpayer money, and they're helping the fraudsters who've been stealing billions of our taxpayer money on top of all of this. Where's Pam Bondi? Can she get off her ass and start putting people in jail? Why is it's Donald Trump. He was condemning the shooting, not the shooting. He was condemning the woman, Renee Nicole Good, saying she had no business being there. She tried to run over these agents. She had no right to obstruct ICE. Basically, you F around, you F around, you find out. FAFO. Basically, he said, look, I stand with ICE all the way. That was a lawful self-defense justified shooting. And I'm going to surge even more DHS troops and officials into Minneapolis and Minnesota. We're not backing down, but it's always the same people. It's Kristi Noem. It's Stephen Miller. It's Donald Trump. It's J.D. Vance. Where's Pam Bondi? Arrests need to be made. People need to go to jail. Democrat criminals need to be held accountable. I mean, am I wrong? Eddie, am I missing something? Should Walz be in handcuffs? What say you?
Should have been handcuffed a long time ago. And as far as Pam Bondi, she got to go. Come on, Mr. President. He needs a raging cane in that position. Stop fooling around, man. Yeah, just because excuse me, I tell you, I talk too fast. But you got to follow the money. All these protesters are getting paid some way, somehow, and most of it is coming out of our friggin' tax money. We got to put some kind of halt on it. You start tracking them, putting all their money on freeze, and then we see how many show up to these friggin' protesters. I'm okay, Mr. Kuhner, man. It was nice talking to you.
Nice. Thank you, Eddie, and you're dead on. Look, you're absolutely right. Okay, we have listeners, by the way, in Minneapolis and across Minnesota. They've been texting me now for the last 2 hours. People in Minnesota now are finding it impossible to go to work. They're going, streets are blocked everywhere. Major roads are being blocked. You've got protesters, thousands and thousands and thousands, and they're chanting, whose streets are streets? Whose streets are streets? No justice, no peace. So they're saying it's eerily similar to what happened right after George Floyd was killed. They now fear that Minneapolis may be burned again. It may be burned to the ground again. And just like in Minneapolis, after the George Floyd riots, Jacob Frey, who was the mayor then, pulled out all the police. And they're saying there's not a cop to be seen anywhere. So the criminals now, the protesters, the activists, the terrorists are essentially now occupying the streets of Minneapolis. 617-266-6868. And remember, it was Tim Walz's crazy wife. She's a Maoist, by the way, an open Maoist, not just a Chinese communist, but an admirer of Mao. Remember what she famously said. She told Tim Walz, when Minneapolis was burning, to open the windows so they could smell the smoke, breathe the burning tires and the burning buildings, because she said she loved the smell of revolution in the air. So I don't know, in the wintertime, it's very cold. I don't know if you can smell burning tires and burning cars and burning buildings, but they want to have happen now what they were able to do 6 years ago. Mags in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Mags, and welcome.
Jeff, and welcome back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All the best to you and your family, Mags. And my advice is stay out of Minneapolis. Trust me. You escape. They should make a movie. Escape from Minneapolis. You don't want to be there because it's about to blow.
Well, we can only hope so, Jeff. What I would like to see is some arrests. Come on, Trump. Let's do it. Let's make people believe in you again. Because at this point, honestly, Walt is a criminal. We've known that for some time now. Cray, he needs to go to jail too. But nothing is happening to these people. And it's happening over and over again where nobody is suffering for what they've done. We need to go back in this country to the rule of law. Amen, Eddie, everything that you just said. Okay? But we need to start with the laws of the land and doing it and putting it forth and believing in it again and believing in our country, what we stand for. Because at this point, if we don't go back to arresting people and doing what the right things are, we're just not doing anything, and we might as well just say goodbye to our country because that's what's happening. And it's so sad to me that nothing has changed. We on Kuhner County talk about it all the time, over and over again, and nothing changes. In my opinion, Jeff, Trump needs to go monthly on national television. Make all those other channels, turn them on, and start telling the country every little thing that is happening and what he is doing. Just like I think it was Roosevelt that did that. But on the radio, let's get this done. Let's force people to start doing what we want them to do and get these criminals out of places that they don't belong.
I am so with you, Mags. And Mags, what do you make of Tim Walz saying he's now getting ready to deploy the National Guard, the Minnesota Guard? They are Minnesotans, not Americans, he says. We are Minnesotans. And that they should now obstruct, thwart, and basically go after ICE, prevent ICE from conducting any more operations or raids. He's basically now setting up a potential scenario where the Minnesota Guard is going to start to fire on ICE agents. And what happens if ICE agents begin to fire back? What are we going to have? A civil war? What are we going to have? Street to street, neighborhood to neighborhood, block to block fighting? Because they don't want to let ICE come in and get the gangbangers and the murderers and the illegal aliens out? Are we looking at 1860 all over again with these lunatics now running the Democratic Party? What say you, Max?
Like Chuck E. Schumer. All of these people have committed treason against our country. Why are they still here? Why aren't they in military tribunals? I don't understand any of it. And I'd like Trump to explain it to us why he's done nothing. Nothing, as far as I'm concerned. And you know how much I have loved President Trump. But in my opinion, nothing has been done. He's done a few things here and there, but there's so many treasonous criminals in our country that need to go and be taken up on military tribunals, and it hasn't happened. And I want to see that because that's what he promised me. God bless America, you too, Kuhner. But honestly, Trump needs to start moving and doing his job. Do your job, Trump. God bless you, Kuhner.
Thank
and have
you,
a
Max.
wonderful day, Kuhner Country.
You too. God bless you. And look, just very, very quickly, this is Kristi Noem at the press conference. So the ICE agent, they haven't divulged the person's name, and I hope they don't, because this person is a dead man. Okay, he's a marked man. The left is desperately trying to find out the name of the agent who shot Renee Nicole Good, and they're going to tear him and his family limb from limb. He's a marked man, so they haven't released the agent's name. But just so you understand the context, he was involved last June, not in Minneapolis, in another city, but he was involved last June in a similar ramming incident whereby, again, a crazed anti-ICE activist decided to hit the gas pedal and try to run him over. And he was hit, and then he was dragged, literally dragged on the street. And then eventually he went to the hospital. He survived. But so her point is just that these ramming attacks, these attempts to run ICE agents over or mow them down with these anti-ICE activists in their cars or SUVs or vehicles, attempted vehicular homicide. She says we're talking about hundreds of instances now, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It's part of their playbook. It's almost like this is a way we can intimidate them, make them know and feel threatened that we're going to run you over. We're going to kill you with our car. She said, so this is not an inexperienced ICE officer. This is not his first rodeo. He's done many of these raids. He's confronted these activists many times. He's been a victim of a ramming attack before. He's experienced. He knows what he's doing. And he was in jeopardy for his life. And that's why he had no choice but to pull the trigger. Roll cut 2A, Mike.
But the facts of the matter is he's an experienced officer. He's been in situations like this before, and he certainly has been out there and followed his training today.
Yeah, of course he followed his training. There's no question he followed his training. Now, just very quick, because you need to hear this. She's saying, look, she's almost pleading. I mean, I can't believe in 2026, please don't use your car as a deadly weapon to mow down law enforcement. This is not a third world banana republic. Okay, this is not Venezuela, with Maduro's colectivos, his militias, where they go around in cars and motorcycles and scooters and start attacking anybody they don't like. Like, no, this is America. You're not supposed to behave like that here. Roll cut 2, a Mike.
People need to stop using their vehicles as weapons. This domestic act of terrorism to use your vehicle to try to kill law enforcement officers is going to stop. And I'm asking the Department of Justice to prosecute it as domestic terrorism because it's clear that it's being coordinated. People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way while they go out there and try to disrupt peace and public safety. And Americans deserve better.
Amen. Victor in Georgetown. Thanks for holding, Victor, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Good morning.
Hi, Victor.
Ashley Babbitt, Air Force veteran, walking in the U.S. Capitol, has her brains blown out and is dead before her body hits the floor. And she didn't have her hands, Jeff, on the wheels of a 4,000-pound weapon. No one cares about Ashley Babbitt. Most people don't even know her damn name. And all the bleeding hearts, which is they're conditioned, to be that way. They care about this individual who definitely made a mistake, absolutely made a mistake, and got herself killed. Now, what we see in Minneapolis is Operation Change the Subject. They're all going down, Jeff. These are Democrat Marxists. These are not politicians. They're thieving kleptomaniacs, and they're power motivated. And that scream out to Portland and Chicago and Boston and all that, that's a warning. That's a siren call to these people that, hey, they're coming for you next, you thieving bastards out there. That have been getting away with just becoming enriched with our tax dollars. So the Marxist Democrats, when they cannot win, Jeff, as you know, in the courts, they try to win on the streets. Now, I want to ask you a question. If, let's say, a bank, let's say it's the Global Warming Bank, is being investigated, and the FBI is on scene, they're on the steps, they're going in, and the president of the Global Warming Bank says, hey, these guys are going in to steal your money. Get down there, interfere with them, block them, use your vehicles, right? And they do that. Hey, isn't that, aiding and abetting?
Yes. It's aiding and abetting, and it's an obstruction of justice. Let's say just not that you would ever do it, but just to indulge me, just to finish your analogy. If this was you, or if this was me, or anybody in this audience, you were the president of that bank, and you were saying, come on, hey, you guys are all going to get arrested. You understand? Get down there, block them, or, obstruct them, get your vehicles, make sure they don't get into that bank. You, me, anybody else, if we weren't sleazy politicians, we'd be arrested. And rightly so. It's aiding and abetting. It's obstruction of justice. I'm sure the police could tell me there's even 5-6 more charges. Instead, it's just another day in Minneapolis. Okay, let me ask you now the question that really the country is. Have you seen the video? And do you think it was a justified shooting in self-defense? The ICE agent that shot, it appears, 3 shots, one of them at minimum hitting Renee Nicole Good in the head as she tried to ram and run over not one but 2 ICE agents in Minneapolis yesterday. To me, it is clearly justified self-defense, but that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. And furthermore, what do you make now of the lunatic mayor of Minneapolis telling ICE to, quote, get the F out of Minneapolis, unquote, pulling the police from the streets, and now urging massive riots all across the city? And then the crazier governor, if it's possible, he's even crazier than Jacob Frey, who reporters now fear could be on the verge of a nervous breakdown, Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, now saying he's on the verge, we're at war with the federal government, as he put it. We're at war with ICE. And he now says he's ready to deploy the National Guard, thousands of troops, in order to stand up, thwart, and push back ICE out of Minneapolis and out of Minnesota if need be. Are they potentially fomenting violence, chaos, God forbid, a civil war? Rob in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Rob, and welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, Rob.
How are you?
Not too bad. I mean, to be honest, I'm just happy I'm not in Minneapolis or, frankly, anywhere in Minnesota right now, because you can cut the tension with a knife. I've got people texting me and they're not leaving their homes. They're not going to work. They're saying, Jeff, it sounds and seems exactly like what happened when the riots erupted after the death of George Floyd. So the whole city now is on edge. But so I'm just happy I'm not there, Rob. Because I don't like to see my city burn. But that's me. Rob, what do you make of all this?
Well, let me just start with this. Happy New Year. I'm a very, very big supporter. I agree with 95% of your stance in life and with America. But let me I just want to say this, and it's difficult because I enjoy you. I think what you're saying regarding what happened yesterday, you're being a little disingenuous. I think maybe one ICE person was in danger of being hit. But the woman was going away, and I know she wasn't following the command. I understand that. But I wish you wouldn't kind of lean with that type of opening, saying 2 people were, again, disingenuous. But I also believe that, they have a job to do. He had a millisecond to decide, and he shot, and we'll deal with the consequences. But let me just say that Bondi needs to get out. I couldn't wait when she got in, and then all of a sudden she became a dud. It's just this thing's a mess. It's a mess, and we got to get Walz out, and I'm afraid. I hope this doesn't turn into the riots, but I don't think Trump is going to allow it to go that far.
Rob, I hope you're right. I'm urging him to be more proactive and to federalize the National Guard, because if you start deploying the National Guard the way Walz wants to, that's a serious recipe for an insurrection and a confrontation. Can you imagine the Minnesota Guard facing off with ICE agents? which is exactly what Waltz and the Democrats would love to see happen. What this would do to our country, never mind, let's say no shots are fired, but just the optics. And then what? We're going to have other governors start declaring, deploying the National Guard to prevent ICE from, coming in and doing federal immigration law enforcement. We'd literally have a constitutional legal crisis. I mean, it's potentially going to split our country apart. They're playing with fire. And one woman's already dead. And by the way, had they not kept telling everybody, go out and obstruct ICE, block ICE, harass ICE, none of this would have happened. Let ICE do their job. And remember, Trump was elected. He has a mandate to come in and undo Biden's open borders and to deport these criminal illegal aliens. He ran on this. He won primarily because of this very issue. So the only ones that are thwarting democracy and thwarting the will of the people are the Democrats. Now, and as for the last point, Rob, honestly, I disagree. I don't think I'm being disingenuous at all. You had 2 ICE agents involved. She backed up her car and she gunned it. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. There's a coordinated national effort now. It's very obvious. Let me just very quickly go through this with you. Here in Boston, the Democratic Socialists of America, again, those are Bernie Sanders' people. This is Mamdani's people, AOC's people, Elizabeth Warren's people. They are going to be mobilizing. They are now on social media saying, join us tonight at 7 p.m. No more fascist death squads. From Minneapolis to Boston, stop ICE terror emergency demonstration. They are going to be showing up at Boston Common, and they want to take over the streets of Boston. Furthermore, they're saying now that demonstrations are already breaking out as far north as Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska. They are now saying, and this is the chant, rise up, whose streets, our streets. Rise up, whose streets, our streets. Mamdani now, the communist mayor of New York City, has come out and addressed the media, saying, siding with Renee Nicole Good and the anti-ICE terrorists in Minneapolis, saying that Minneapolis is a sanctuary city. ICE does not belong there. ICE must be now driven out from Minneapolis and from every other sanctuary city in the United States. And according now to him, ICE has murdered Renee Nicole Good. This was a state-sanctioned execution by Donald Trump. So this is now what's breaking out across the country. And it's getting worse. Mayor Wu, Boston Mayor Wu, is now siding with the anti-ICE terrorists, demanding that ICE be kicked out of Minneapolis and, of course, out of Boston. Maura Healey has issued a statement saying that she sides with Renee Nicole Good and that ICE must be kicked out of Minneapolis as well. So it's just crowds apparently last night breached the entrance of the federal courthouse in Minneapolis. They busted the doors wide open, and they are now demanding that ICE leave the city. Mayor Frey, Jacob Frey, has told police to make no arrests whatsoever, that the police must pull out completely and let these activists and rioters and terrorists occupy all of Minneapolis until ICE is chased out of the Twin Cities. So here is where we stand right now. And it's getting uglier almost by the second. Apparently now roads are being blocked all across Minneapolis. Innocent drivers are now being terrorized. Highways are being blocked. It is absolute chaos and mayhem across much of Minneapolis. Now they're chanting on the streets. This is about 5 minutes ago. Forgive me for the language. We're going to tear this mother effer up, meaning the city, the Minneapolis itself. And all with the blessing of Tim Walz. In fact, they're urging Tim Walz, the rioters and the protesters on the streets, the domestic terrorists, to call out the National Guard. And basically, these are like militias, paramilitary militias. And they want to team up with the Minnesota Guard to go after and start killing and hunting ICE agents. 617-266-6868 is the number. Gene in New York. Thanks for holding, Gene, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
I just wanted to tell you I was having serious Kuhner withdrawal over the break, so I was listening to the old podcast from last year, and it struck me the hope and enthusiasm that we had when Trump got back in. I don't know what's going on. I love him. I'm his biggest supporter, but we are running out of time, and nothing has changed. Like Mag said, there's no law and order. Things are getting worse. We really need a fighter, a pit bull, because the Dems, they fight vicious, they're dirty, and Bondi has to go. We're squandering everything that we had wanted, prayed for, the Senate, Trump, Congress. This is ridiculous.
Well, we knew, I agree with you completely. Please don't get me wrong. I completely agree with you, Gene. But we knew the left wasn't going to give up power easily, right? When Trump won and he was sworn in last January, we knew that they were going to fight us tooth and nail. And we knew that they were going to take it to the streets. And we knew that they were going to try to create an incident. And they've been looking to do it now. Honestly, everybody thought it was going to happen in Chicago because the anti-ICE activists, the rioters, were so reckless and so irresponsible and so inflammatory and so provocative. Someone was going to get shot. Someone was going to get killed. By the grace of God, nothing happened. It's now happened in Minneapolis. They have their George Floyd. They have their, and I'm putting this in air quotes, they have their martyr. They have their dead body. And now they're going to seize on it. And I think they want to take it city to city to city to city. And they're making their move. This is their insurrection now. This is going to be a nationwide insurrection. They're going to take it street to street, city to city, state after state, and they want now to bring ICE to its knees and bring Trump and his anti-open borders, anti-globalist, anti-illegal immigration agenda. They want to now grind it to dust. They want to break him and his presidency. And my fear is, and I've been saying this now for a long time, he's doing great. I love JD. I love Tom Homan. I think Kristi Noem has got pluck and fight. But if you don't have the right guy in the FBI and you don't have the right attorney general, in other words, you're only as good as your personnel. This thing could spiral out. It could go south. This thing could go sideways very quick. And the media is pumping this hard. It is saturation 24/7. They're calling it a murder. They're calling for this agent to be arrested. They're demonizing ICE now as fascist death squads, Nazis. They are really inflaming. They know what they're doing. They're trying now to incite people to go out and take it to the streets. And look, even if Trump manages to regain control, what do they want? They want the American people to see cities going up in flames. They want to see gun battles. They want to see protesters getting their heads smashed open and confronting ICE agents and bullets flying left, right, and center. And then turn around and say, look what Trump has done to America. This is all Trump's fault. So it's a deliberate strategy on the part of the Democrats, the media, and the radical left. And that's why, Gene, I'm saying this, and I'm praying that Trump's people are listening and going to do something. You've got to cut him off at the pass. You let this go on for another 24, 48 hours, it's like a fire. It's just going to burn and burn, and after a while, it becomes a wildfire. It becomes out of control. So that's why I'm urging President Trump, they've got to get on top of this, and they got to hammer him and hammer him hard. If not, we have an insurrection on our hands. Gene, final word to you.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And being such a big Trump supporter, I do think he needs to focus on home now. Enough with the overseas and foreign countries and everything, because all of this stuff is escalating, along with the economy and the other things that we're concerned about.
Well, look, Gene, I'm not the only one that has said this. In fact, I'm going to read something on the other side of the break that I think everybody needs to hear. But essentially now we're in the midst of a civil war. It's more of a cold civil war. I mean, a person died yesterday, but so it gets hot at times. But what you're seeing now is a political, ideological, social, cultural civil war. It's not a military civil war, thank the Lord. But this is what they're now. Look, the Democrats are now pushing open insurrection, naked insurrection in the biggest cities of the United States. If we're in a civil war situation and the communists are rising, he's got to focus now here. Forget any other place on the earth, because if we lose the battle here, it's over. Am I wrong? Okay, a lot of developments now taking place. Just very quickly to remind everybody, this is what Tampon Tim Walz yesterday, in one of the most unhinged and frankly disgraceful press conferences ever held by a governor in the history of the United States. And I'm choosing my words very carefully. Basically now saying we're at war. He said it the day before. Then he said it again after the shooting of Renee Nicole Good. That Minnesota is at war with the federal government. Roll cut 21, Mike.
Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission.
And he's now calling, he's on the verge of deploying the National Guard, where he says they will come in and then try to push ICE out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, setting up a confrontation between Minnesota, Minnesotans, as he puts it, Trump, and the federal government and ICE. Now, apparently Black Hawks are now being spotted overhead right across Minneapolis. Tensions now are rising. There are thousands and thousands of activists, protesters, rioters on the streets. State police have been told to stand down. Residents now are being told that they're on their own, that if mass rioting, looting should break out, and that's the fear, that they will have to fend for themselves. Now, in the midst of all of this, the White House is fighting back. The White House now is eviscerating Tim Walz for declaring war on the federal government. According now, this is straight from President Trump and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. They now say, quote, "This lunatic," meaning Tim Walz, "this lunatic is sick," in caps, and dangerous, in caps. And they are now demanding that Walz must resign. They're saying he is a criminal governor who clearly is now using this to deflect from his involvement in the massive Somali fraud scandal, as is Jacob Frey, the crazy mayor of Minneapolis, that this is all this is an attempt at mass deflection, but that his words, his actions, his recklessness is now so dangerous, so irresponsible, so incendiary that they are now demanding his resignation. Trump now may be addressing the country. We're going to see there's developments. He's under tremendous pressure from people like me and now in his own inner circle to preempt Walz and federalize the National Guard so that Waltz does not do it himself, deploy the guard, and try to deploy them against ICE. And God forbid we may have federal agents shooting back and forth, gunfire being exchanged between the Minnesota Guard and ICE agents. Now, on top of all of this, I just want to read to you a text message that I got earlier. And I'd love to get your take on this because it's not politically correct, but I think it's true. And so let me read it. 603, you can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470, 603 up from New Hampshire. Jeff, I don't mean to sound uncaring because I do feel bad that this woman, Renee Nicole Good, died as a direct result of the brainwashing by the Democratic Party. But I have to echo my same sentiments when agitators were shot by Kyle Rittenhouse during the riots in 2020 in Kenosha, Wisconsin. To the deceased, the Democrat politicians and influencers who have encouraged your unlawful behavior do not feel your pain. They will not shed a tear for your loss and will not lose a minute's sleep over your death. Jacob Frey, Tim Waltz, and every member of the Democrat Party will all go home and eat a nice hot meal and sleep safely in a warm bed while your lifeless body lies in a cold morgue. You have been conned into giving up everything for a criminal political party that doesn't give a damn about you or your loved ones. The people you look up to see you as nothing more than cannon fodder to score cheap political points over. Was Renee Nicole Good the victim of Democrat media far left brainwashing? And in many ways, and I'm very sorry she's dead. She has a child, for God's sake. She has a lesbian partner. Did she not bring this upon herself? What was she doing there? And by the way, the video surveillance now confirms it. She was stalking and harassing ICE for hours. She had a 6-year-old boy in school. You're a mother, for God's sake. What are you doing? Harassing ICE agents, obstructing law enforcement, driving your SUV and literally blocking them as they're trying to implement and execute an operation to arrest dangerous criminal illegal aliens. And then being told specifically you're under arrest, get out of the car. And you disobey a command? And then you back up your vehicle and then you hit the gas pedal and you try to ram or run over two agents who are right in front of your car. One of them, in fact, was right in front of the car. You want to talk about negligent. You want to talk about irresponsible. Lady, what were you thinking? But in her mind, she was a hero. And she was completely encouraged, egged on, and supported by Tim Waltz and by Jacob Frey and by the political, the politicians and the Democrats in Minnesota and nationally. Now they're calling for justice for Renee. That's now the chant, justice for Renee. And now they're saying an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. In other words, go out and start killing some ICE agents. This is getting ugly fast. And so, John Hinderaker, who is a very good, a brilliant conservative, a brilliant writer. I've had him on a few times on this show. He's actually based in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And he writes for Powerline. To me, it's one of the best blogs in the country. Now, he's now openly saying that Waltz is threatening a civil war. And he says that ICE agents are out. I'm just reading now from his latest dispatch. He is warning Americans about what is happening. He's there at the epicenter of what's going on. This is not a bomb thrower. This is a highly respected thinker, writer, one of the most brilliant conservatives in the country. He's in his 70s. He's been around for 40, 50 years. Anyway, he runs a think tank in Minnesota and Minneapolis, St. Paul. And this is what he writes. I just want to read parts of it. ICE agents now are out in force in Minneapolis, thousands of them. They're arresting criminal illegal aliens. They have encountered opposition from the very beginning. Local officials like Jacob Frey and Tim Waltz were denouncing their presence from the beginning and openly supporting the violation of our immigration laws. Because of them, liberal quote-unquote protesters turned out as well, illegally interfering with the ICE agents. Hinderaker continues, the inevitable happened. A liberal woman used their vehicle to block a street so that ICE agents were hemmed in and could not leave a residential neighborhood. Officers approached the woman's vehicle to arrest her and told her to get out of the car. Instead of complying, she gunned her engine, driving directly at another ICE agent who was in the street. That agent shot the woman in self-defense, killing her. Now, he goes on and says there's video after video. There's even more videos. Local people are saying this is outrageous, that she should have stopped, that she should have complied, that she shouldn't have been there, that she bears direct blame and responsibility for what happened. But then Hinderaker says we have to now confront what's going on. The behavior of Jacob Frey and the behavior of Tim Waltz, it looks as though the liberals are hoping to turn this incident into George Floyd 2.0. And he says they do not have the right to form a mob that threatens law enforcement and interferes with the execution of their duties. And that what they're doing now constitutes a deadly threat to law enforcement. And that Tim Waltz in particular, when he now starts openly talking about the possibility of a civil war, has now become completely and utterly unhinged. And he ends with this. The fact that mainstream Democrats and Tim Waltz as a two-term governor, who was the Democrats' candidate for vice president just 14 months ago, must be considered mainstream, are openly talking about insurrection, casts doubt on whether we have a future as a unified country. If you keep pushing insurrection, and now you're calling for ICE to be pushed out of every major city, with Minneapolis being sort of, I guess, the 21st century version of South Carolina. South Carolina was ground zero in the opening shots of the Civil War. Minnesota now is teetering on potentially being ground zero in the opening shots of this insurrection. If you're going to drive ICE out of cities and refuse to recognize federal authority and federal enforcement of immigration laws, and you're now openly encouraging for rioting to take place and telling the police, get out. The activists, the rioters, the terrorists, they now own the streets. And this has the full blessing and the full support of the National Democratic Party, of every major Democratic leader, of every major Democratic governor. How do we last as a unified, cohesive country? The Democrats destroyed our country once. They led us down the road to a civil war. It was the Democrats who broke America up. It was the Democrats who pushed Southern secession. It was the Democrats who pushed nullification and the defense of slavery and telling the feds to get out of the states. Now it's not slave labor, it's illegal immigrant labor. They were defending their power then, they're defending their power now. And they're increasingly willing to use violence to achieve their ends. We as a country now cannot bury our heads and turn a blind eye anymore. So, if no one else has the guts to say it, I'm going to say it. Tim Walz is a traitor. Jacob Frey is a traitor. Traitors need to be arrested and made an example of. The time for pussyfooting around is over. The time for speeches is over. The time for conciliation and ignoring what's happening is over. It is now time to do what Abraham Lincoln did. It is time to reassert federal authority, federal control, federal sovereignty, law and order. The Constitution. Send in the troops. Send in federalize the National Guard. Send in the National Guard. And let Minnesota fire the first shot. Like South Carolina fired the first shot. If this is where Tim Walz wants to go, I'm going to tell the Democrats now to your faces. You lost the first Civil War, you're going to lose the second one. You're not winning this one. Trump won. And just to show you how close the historical parallel is, the Democrats began to break up and secede from the United States in protest of the election of Abraham Lincoln. They refused to accept the results of Lincoln's victory. They are now refusing to accept the results of Trump's victory last year and his mandate to secure our borders and to get rid and deport the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden brought in. You lost, period, and you lost fair and square. But you are the enemies of democracy. You are refusing to abide by the election results. You are the election deniers. Mr. President, you want to go down in history as one of the greatest, if not the greatest president we ever had? Follow in Abraham Lincoln's footsteps. And you tell Minnesotans, led by Walz and led by Frey, we will no longer tolerate treason. We will no longer tolerate insurrection. We will no longer tolerate the defiance of federal law and federal law enforcement. We're going to send in now more ICE agents. We're going to make even more arrests. And Tim Walz and Jacob Frey need to be put in handcuffs. And for God's sake, federalize, mobilize the National Guard, and send in tens and tens of thousands of troops. Because if not, there is a confederacy of blue states, a confederacy of sanctuary cities that is now amassing an insurrection against America, against our people, and against our Constitution. You have no choice now. Forget Greenland, even though I back you on that. Forget Venezuela. Forget it all. It's time to put America first. Lock up Tim Walz. Lock up Jacob Frey. Arrest them. Arrest all of them. Because if you don't, I'm telling you, you have a rebellion on your hands. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Sia in Utah. Thanks for holding, Sia, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. I recently retired to Utah from the communist state of Massachusetts for the obvious reasons. I'd like to bring up the recent rulings by the Supreme Court that constrains President Trump's power to federalize the National Guard for domestic law enforcement, effectively blocking deployments to Chicago and forcing the return of Guard troops in California and Oregon to the state control. So I think that this is going to exacerbate this situation. Any further deployment of National Guards to troubled cities. But more importantly, I have voted for President Trump 3 times. And I think that it's time for him, people with testicular fortitude in charge. Because I don't want America, the country that I have come to love and cherish, to go down the drain like my home country, which is Iran. I left Iran in 1979. I saw the revolution there. And what I'm seeing around the cities in the United States, an exact replica of that disaster. The only difference is that we have an alliance of communists, and with all due respect, these militant, multi-pronoun criminals, such as this lady. Yes, I have watched the videos from different angles, and I can see that the ICE agent's life, based on those videos and based on all the eyewitnesses, was in a severe danger. So, as you know, there is a 4-letter word, FIFO.
F around and you find out. 617-266-6868. Okay, it's 9:20 here. It is 8:20 in the morning, Central Time in Minneapolis, St. Paul. As I speak to you now, in St. Paul, there is a massive crowd that is amassing around maybe 30 ICE agents, maybe 30, 40. They're clearly outnumbered. The ICE agents are clearly outnumbered. There are now clashes taking place between these anti-ICE terrorists and the ICE agents themselves. Apparently now pepper spray is being deployed, pepper balls are being used, clashes are taking place, arrests are being made, and the situation is just escalating and escalating. More protesters are pouring in. It's going to get to the point where ICE is going to be overwhelmed, where these federal officers are going to be overwhelmed. And I'm worried that some of them may end up getting killed. So they got to send in reinforcements because they're outnumbered already, and it's going to get worse because more protesters are just coming wave after wave. And this is already just 8:21 in the morning in Central Time in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So this, as I said, this thing could get ugly very fast. Okay, let me ask all of you. Is Tim Walz employing Wag the Dog to distract from his Somali fraud issues? Because nobody's talking about what a criminal he is and Jacob Frey, the crazy mayor of Minneapolis, and how they're involved in billions of dollars in fraud. Now it's all the shooting of Renee Nicole Good and ICE, and whether now Minneapolis is going to be burned to the ground. Are we now watching Wag the Dog? Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Thanks for taking the call, Jeff.
My pleasure, Dan.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, when you think about this, you never heard of all of this new narrative being born until the exposure of all the corruption that's been going on in Minnesota. You're absolutely 100% right. Tim Walz should be shackled. The assistant attorney general should be shackled. The attorney general, the mayor, and everyone found that was in part of this fraud that's been going on against the American people in Minnesota, where their good money is being spent on Somalis that have got businesses that aren't even legitimate. The money's going straight into their pockets, straight to Somalia, and those people in Minnesota have been lied to for decades. Walz has been covering it up. Frey's been covering it up. In fact, this is such a huge cover-up that why this is all happening is because they don't want it to spread to California. They don't want it to spread to Massachusetts. They don't want to spread to Chicago, because it spells the end for the liberal lunacy and the fact that they've been fraudulently taking money to sponsor their campaigns, to put into their coffers, and to basically pay for all of these illegitimate invaders who have come into our country where everyone else has to work, but they sit on their butts collecting everything that they can collect, and when asked for their vote, they give it. And while in their spare time, they're coming up with ways to rip us off. They're not sending all this money back into their countries. They're not for the United States. They're for whoever's got the money. And who's ever got the money, they're willing to take. And you know something, Jeff, this is so sick. This is so sick that imagine all of this been going on for decades. It's been covered up. Remember, they say the tip of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. Well, remember, the tip of the iceberg is just the tip. The real iceberg is below the surface. And if you think it's billions of dollars, it's hundreds of billions of dollars. And you're going to see that in all of these different states. They know the writing is on the wall. If they get exposed, the lunacy in this Democratic Party will be destroyed. Things will start to come back to normal. They won't have this political corruptive hand being held over everybody's throat in this country. And we can get back to some normal life when we're not going to be lied to. We're not going to be steered into this lunacy where people are running over people. We've got federal officers that have got a right to be there. They're not in there to protect the citizens. They're in there to get all these political invaders out of our country. The people that should be watching the safety of the people in Minnesota are the police department, and you don't even have a police chief or a mayor that want to protect them. This is coming to a head. This is a pinnacle right now. Trump's got to jump on this. Walz has got to go to jail. The attorney general, the assistant attorney general, the mayor, and everyone who is responsible and dirty for all this fraud that's been going on, and everyone who's involved in fraud throughout the United Democratic states, as far as California, New York, Chicago, and a lot of these other liberal states that have been pulling the same crap.
Oh, amen.
On the American.
Amen. No, amen. And Dan, look, just to reinforce what you're saying, now ICE is completely tied up. They're in knots right now. They're being surrounded all across Minnesota, all across St. Paul, all across Minneapolis. Well, I got to say, they're following the Moonbats, the hardcore left, are following Tim Walz and Jacob Frey's instructions. He said, take it to the streets, and they are now taking it to the streets. I guess nobody's working today in Minnesota. Nobody's working in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But a lot of protesters now, a lot of hardcore leftists. They are now clashing with ICE, attacking ICE, pelting ICE with bottles, rocks, bricks. Clashes are breaking out. Arrests are being made. But they're going to have to surge many, many more troops or ICE officials or DHS officials because they're getting overwhelmed. They just don't have the manpower. And you can see it now. They're being swamped. And my fear is someone's going to get killed again. This thing could blow, and it could blow very fast. 617-266-6868. Gino in Buffalo. Thanks for holding, Gino, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, my paisan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, my fellow paisan?
Very, very good, my friend. I would just like to say this is the tumultuous avalanche that started with one single snowflake at the top of the mountain, and that snowflake being Barack Hussein Obama, who promised us transformational change. The communists changed the meanings to our words and phrases, and they also let them teach revisionist history in our schools and taught our children that this is a hateful country founded upon stolen land and misery. And then it comes down to our mayors, our governors and mayors of these states and cities who declared themselves sanctuaries for illegal immigrants and the illegal activities in which they participate in and bring into those cities. And no arrests have been made to any Democrat that I can think of, or Republican for that matter, who participated in such treasonous and traitorous activities within our own country. And here we are today watching the same cities and states burn that were promised would never happen again because we would fix it. Well, it hasn't been fixed, and it only grows worse.
Gino, are you concerned? I mean, Minneapolis it's on the edge. You got protesters now. It's starting to look a lot like 2020. They're pouring out into the streets. They're taking over roads, highways, main boulevards. They're starting to hammer some of these ICE agents now. It's getting ugly, and it's only, 8:35 in the morning there. Are you concerned that Minneapolis, you could see a massive riot, what we saw like in 2020, where, chunks of the city are just burned to the ground, and that this could spread to city after city? Are we on the verge now of an insurrection? I mean, a major, massive insurrection?
Well-organized, well-paid-for group of people who want to see this country burn. They followed in the words of Barack Obama, who said this is what he wanted, and they will not end until it happens. And they're well-funded and well-organized. I don't know who doesn't have the time to go out and work, but I guess if you're being paid to be a professional agitator and protester, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing.
You're in the wrong line of work, my friend. Gino, you're dead on, and thank you very much for that call. Nick in Weymouth. Thanks for holding, Nick, and welcome.
How you doing, Jeff?
Good, good. I mean, again, I'm very concerned about what's happening, but boy, oh boy, you look at, just the more information that is now coming out. Thank the Lord I'm not in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But anyway, go ahead, Nick.
Without a strong attorney general, and Trump has never had one. He's had weak ones. Sessions was a horrible choice. Barr was a horrible choice for many reasons, and so is Pam Bondi. In the mighty world of U.S. Code 18, there are hundreds of situations that should be able to nullify all of this crap. It can go from you cannot interfere with a federal agent. That includes judges. That includes ICE people. That includes marshals. National Guards, bull crap. No National Guard person can interfere even with a U.S. Marshal. So the problem is, where are the prosecutions? I have seen none. If you remember with the court judges being intimidated for the Roe versus Wade crap, Garland secretly told the U.S. Marshals not to arrest anybody where they were protesting in front of the homes. You can't even be in proximity. Just being there, holding a sign, can get you 5 years in prison and about a $10,000 fine, and so on. There are many restrictions. You cannot mess with a federal agent, and including an ICE agent. I haven't heard of one case of anybody being prosecuted. And by the way, Jeff, if you burnt down the Rentham police station, I assume they have one 10 years ago, I think you'd still be in federal prison. What do you think?
Oh, you're dead
Guess
on.
what?
Oh, you're right. No, Nick, look, if I did what BLM did and what they continue to do to this day, which is burn down police stations, if I went to my local police, not that I ever would do it, but just hypothetically, and I burned that thing down, I'm in jail. I'm in jail for 10, 12, 15, and rightly so, 15 years. Instead, some of them got a slap on the wrist. Some of them got absolutely nothing. And that's what they've learned. There are no consequences. That's why they've become so emboldened. I mean, look, they're walking up to ICE agents, giving them the middle finger, telling them to go F themselves, pushing them, punching them, slapping them, throwing stones at them, bottles of urine on them. And what, this is okay? This is allowed to happen? So no wonder they don't fear or respect ICE. Look what they're getting away with. And look, this is, maybe if many of you are saying, Jeff, Kuhner, why is the Kuhner man getting so emotional about this? I was in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I was there 13 years ago. I call Ashton my miracle from Minnesota. We adopted Ashton from Minnesota. He was born in Minnesota. We adopted him when he was 18 months old. Okay, our first child. We spent a couple months in Minneapolis and St. Paul getting the adoption papers ready, taking care of Ashton, dealing with his birth mom. It's a clean, or at least it was, clean city, safe city, civilized city. People were so nice, so friendly. What they say about Minnesota nice is true. That the left could run that whole city and state into the ground in less than 10, 15 years. To me, it's unimaginable. It's unbelievable. And that the people of Minnesota have allowed them to do that. It's a gorgeous state. Minnesota is a beautiful state. The people have a heart of gold. And to just watch it go up in flames like this, and led by these lunatics. And again, what are they defending? What is this grand principle here that they're standing on? You want to defend illegal alien murderers? Child rapists? Drug traffickers? Sex predators? Illegal alien Somali scammers and thieves and grifters who are stealing money from food lunch programs and from billions in Medicaid? Like that's your big principle that you're going to stand on? Look, I know there's a silent majority in Minnesota. I know there is. They've got to have their voices heard. Because this militant minority now, led by Waltz and Jacob Frey, they are destroying that great city. They're destroying that state in front of our eyes. And to President Trump, I'm looking at these ICE agents. For God's sake, send in the cavalry, man. They're outmanned, they're outgunned, they're outnumbered, and it's only 8:30 in the morning. What's going to happen at 8:30 tonight when the vultures come out? He's got 24 hours. If he doesn't send in the National Guard, I fear that Minneapolis we may see a repeat of 2020. 617-266-6868. Nick, thank you for that call. Okay, I want to ask all of you, what do you make of the shooting of the ICE agent? Sorry, the shooting of by the ICE agent of Renee Nicole Good. Was it a justified shooting or not? And Tim Waltz, is he deliberately fomenting now these protests, these riots? Okay, very quick. And again, best audience in the business. I know. I'm like a tape, but it's true. I don't know what else to tell you. So this is from 603. And I think no truer words have been spoken. Listen to this. Jeff, let's imagine that the roles were reversed. And it was this ICE officer who had been run down and killed by Renee Nicole Good. Even though this woman, yes, she would have been arrested, Mayor Jacob Frey, Governor Tampon Tim Walz would have come out and offered some weak condolences for the officer's family, but then they would have backed it up by saying this never would have happened if Trump hadn't sent in his so-called shock troops. And furthermore, the anti-ICE protesters would have gone on social media and celebrated the fact that an evil ICE agent was killed. These people are shameless hypocrites. Bingo. Say it wasn't Renee that was killed, but that ICE agent who had just been run over and, died. Those very same people now that are on the streets and yesterday, they would have been celebrating on social media. Yeah, one more Nazi scumbag dead. Oh, a Gestapo thug. Good. He got what he deserved. I mean, who are we kidding? That's how sick and deranged they've become. They want to kill and run over ICE agents. And that's what Kristi Noem was trying to say yesterday. She goes, we've had over 100 attempts by using vehicles of mowing down or ramming or running over ICE agents. Assaults are up, what is it? 1,300%. Sorry, 1,300%. Death threats up 8,000%. There is now a target on the back of every ICE agent. And that's because of the lies and the demonization and the vilification campaign unleashed by the Democrats, the media, and scum like Tim Walz and Jacob Frey. Rob in Westwood. Thanks for holding, Rob, and welcome.
Jeff.
Rob, buddy.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, my friend. I feel like you should be in Minneapolis. I don't know why, but a guy like you, ICE could use a guy like you.
Frank Rizzo. Hey, Jeff, this is so performative, it's funny. Listen, obviously, they'll do anything to hide the invaders. That's a new game show they've been playing. And also, anything they could do to hide the money track. It doesn't matter what they do. Just block off all these sanctuary cities and starve them out. Who cares? Let them destroy the cities. Trump's going to make new cities anyways. And the other thing, Jeff, to all these people, stop whining, please. The economy's going to be kicking in the next 8 weeks or so. And this is just giving them time to clean up the mess, okay, to set up the program. These Democrats and these organizations, they've been waiting for this to happen for years. This is nothing new. Who cares what Wall says or Ellison or Amy Klobuchar? They're all in on it. Who gives a crap? And the good news is this. We should block off Boston right now because it's just going to be the same. It's all performative. They're all the same. That mayor, where'd they find him? He's from Chicago originally, probably. Is that where he's from?
Jacob Frey?
Yeah.
I have no idea where he's from. I mean, where they found that lunatic, I have no idea. No, Rob, I'm thinking, bring in the water cannons. I mean, it's cold in Minneapolis, like here, and the freezing temperature. Hit them with water. Freeze them. Let them freeze their asses off. Trust me, that'll clear the streets awfully fast. Like, instead, they're just letting these poor ICE agents they're just leaving them twisting in the wind. And they're just getting, rocks thrown at them and bottles and, they're getting punched and kicked. And I mean, I feel so bad for them. Like, come on, man. They need more support. Give them support. Like, seriously, where's Pam Bondi? Like, come on. ICE is under siege. Do something, for God's sake. Rob, thank you for that call. Bob in New Hampshire. I hate to do this to you, Bob. 1 minute left. The floor is yours. Go.
Well, it's more of a question in regards of what can the average citizen do to try to protect themselves against the elected front line that's supposed to protect them in regards to, because if the mayor goes bad, if the city council goes bad, if the governor goes bad, if the state attorney general goes bad, I'm saying that.
Oh, you're right. What do? Like, you have a lot of citizens now in Minneapolis saying, what do we do?